Hey, Ron, you're the type of guy who likes to play your ones against your ones. Usually today, it seemed like you were mixing it up a little bit. Just what led to that decision?
Well, just getting ready for this game coming up. We're going to mix a lot of guys in, and we just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to get some work against different people. How they handle things, the way they look at things, more so than anything else. That's
Have you decided yet on this game?
No, we haven't. We're not going to talk personnel until tomorrow.
Okay.
As far as that's concerned, we have time.
And with the new schedule, with that 2-week period that you have, when do you guys really start looking ahead to the opener, or have you already with the Chargers?
We've also done some stuff on our Thursday night game too, because it's going to be a very quick turnaround for the coaches. So, we're trying to get ourselves ahead and stay ahead.
The Ravens have won 19 preseason games in a row.
Okay.
Does that do anything for you? Do you mention that at all?
Somebody want to use my catchphrase, please? That's
you,
interesting. That's interesting.
You would consider that interesting.
That's interesting.
File
Just
that
so
under.
you know, that's interesting.
Have you ever put any stock at all in the wins and losses of the preseason? Is that something you work with?
No. It's all about how they play.
With Curtis Samuel and I guess William Jackson, we didn't see doing a lot of team stuff today. When you have guys who are entering your team, even though Curtis kind of knows the system a little bit, how much, maybe not concerned, but what goes into kind of wanting to get those guys ramped up and on the field, even though they're veterans and know the league? Kind of what goes into the next couple of weeks of how much it matters to them, for you, to them to be on the field?
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is you're going to play with who's available. And so if those guys are available, great, we're going to play with them. Do I want them out there? Absolutely. Am I going to fret about it? No, because the truth of the matter is you play with who's available, and that's all I can do. That's all we can do as a football team. That's all we can do as an offense or a defense or a special teams. We're going to play with the guys that are available. But do I want them out there? Absolutely. I'd love to have everybody ready and available for when it comes to one.
Ron, you've with Dax Milne, just curious, what's impressed you, or what have you kind of learned about him throughout this process, going back to even OTAs all the way up till now?
Well, first off, when we watched him coming out of college, he caught a lot of footballs. He did a lot of things for BYU, and so we know he's a quality football player. He got here, and it wasn't too big for him. That was one of the first things that stood out. Secondly, is he's very competitive. He competes all the time. He's a very bright, smart football player, and he's got a skill set that suits us very well. So we're very intrigued by who he is as a football player.
In the final roster, and you've got a ways to go before you get to that. And a lot of the conversation is always like, well, within this position, this guy or that guy. But it's really also about, well, you want to keep X at this position versus X at that position versus that versus that. To whatever degree you can say, what's the process like for you and the coaching staff in the front office to go through not just the position by position, but when you have to look at it across the board?
Well, we're going to look at everything. Obviously, you look at your starting group first, then you look at who you believe your primary backups are. You look at guys that are potential primary backups, and then you also talk about position flex for those guys. And then as you work to the next part of it, then it's all about what is this guy's potential to help us, and is he a guy that can help us in the future? There's a lot of things that we'll ask and we'll talk about. As far as positions are concerned, do we pick one position over another? No, but do we want to make sure that we have enough at each position? Yes. So that'll be a bigger conversation as well. I know you guys are trying to figure out how many receivers we're going to keep, how many corners we're going to keep. That's always a big part of the conversation. And we got to look at it as to, if you do, what position can you get by with keeping the bare minimum?
Hypothetically, who would be your 53 right now?
Hypothetically, who would be 53 for us? That's John Bostic's jersey number.
You moved Torrey McTyer up, got him some reps with the first team, and after his showing a couple weeks ago, how has he held up in that situation?
He's done a nice job. He really has. He's a guy that's had really good OTAs, minicamp, and training camp. We've been paying attention to what he's done. So he's a guy that as we go into this final week, we're very interested and very intrigued in.
And then with Antonio Gandy Golden, have you seen the guy, because he had such a disrupted camp last year with injuries and learning stuff. Have you seen the guy that you drafted last
We
year?
were really, really pleased with what we got last week. You know, he had a rough outing the first game. Last week he bounced back very well, handled the tough situation. So, again, he's a guy that has a skill set we like. He plays a position we're obviously interested in. And again, we'll go through this final week as we prepare, because there's a lot of guys that we got to consider.
This one is super, super random, so apologies. But Shohei Ohtani's pitching at Baltimore on Wednesday, and I was just curious, like, what do you think an NFL version of that would be? Like, would it be a two-way guy? Like, and why don't we really see any two-way players anymore or anything like that?
That's a good question. Yeah, because I think the last real one was Babe Ruth, wasn't it? Gosh, good two-way guy in the NFL. Well, that's a good one. I don't know if we have a guy like that in the league right now. There are some guys that have those kind of skill sets that could probably play two-way. I mean, a Chase Young or a Montez Sweat could probably play tight end, with their athletic abilities. And on the inverse, a couple of tight ends could probably play defensive end. So that's interesting. DBs, wide receivers, yeah, there's a few of those guys around.
Is the reason we don't see that is because it's so hard to already grasp a position, or is it too dangerous? Like, what?
I just think it's hard to to split your time. I mean, the last time it was done in the NFL, I think Coach Belichick had a receiver that played DB as well. So there's people that are probably capable. You just got to put the time into it.
And quick housekeeping note: we didn't see Nate Kaxer out there. Is he all right?
Yeah, Nate's in the protocol.
Okay.
It's one of those things that he is fully vaccinated, but we have to follow the rules.
Speaking of special teams, when there's so few returns in a preseason and so many guys who kind of are working in right now, how do you evaluate that? And do you feel like you've made progress in figuring out who you want there and punt and kick returner?
We have, because the nice thing is we had opportunities to have a couple of returns last week. We had a couple the week before. We had a few punt returns as well. So knowing what we're looking for and how things have been handled in practice, as well as the 2 preseason games, I think it's given us a pretty good lead as to the direction we want to head with that.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Well, good. All right, cool. Thank you.
Hey Chase, we've kind of all seen the improvement in your hands, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, what was the process to get better in that area, and how much focus that on in the off season?
I'd say really just repetition. Working your hands, try to work them extra after practice. Watching film on guys, watching how they work their hands. I feel like all that just come down to watching film and just repetition.
What are the subtle things you kind of have to pay attention to when you try to improve your hands?
You just have to use them. I mean, for real. I mean, you go out and you pass rush, and it's like you'll be so focused on what's going on in front of you that you'll forget to use your hands. I feel like that's what happens with a lot of dudes, maybe young dudes just coming in. So that's what I try to focus on. This off season, this camp, just obviously focus on the man in front of me, but still working my hands at the same time.
Montez said that you guys were talking about maybe breaking some records. I'm curious what kind, first of all, how much is that a discussion among you guys, and what do you think is achievable with you two?
I ain't gonna put no number out there, but I would say that we always talk about being the best. Feel like you gotta talk about it to one day get there. You gotta let it manifest, as they say. So I feel like we talk about it here and there, but we always talk about doing extra work and things like that too.
Records like this team or NFL?
We've talked about this team, just chatting. We've looked up all the different records and stuff like that.
And then last thing, with your hip feeling better now and all that, do you feel you're able to turn the corner better than you were able to last year?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. Got my ankles a lot stronger than last year. Just my feet stronger in general. I feel a lot better.